I'm going to get Greg to have a quick chat to you. Now, Greg's, he's going to be more the other side, the cautious side. So you've got to listen to what Greg's going to tell you. He's going to sort of give you his spin on how he feels you've got to be very careful about. Okay? So, Greg Mellick.
What Ray didn't tell you in his unnecessary long introduction to me, but my main role in life is to curb his enthusiasm and impart a sense of reality. There was a lot, he's done a lot of very good things, but what's happened now is it's not just a matter of TPG, it'll be Telstra and Optus, and they won't be so easy. It's not just a question of getting, in my opinion, it's not just a question of getting doctors' reports. You have to provide evidence, such as the 1,557-page report referred to by Dr. Cooper and other such studies. So the council do not just have the doctor's report, they have the evidence of all these studies which show that there is potential for injury and danger from the emissions, especially from 5G. Now we have a problem because 5G hasn't been around long enough for an appropriate long-term epidemiological study. We're back to the same situation the world was in the 60s when we're trying to prove that smoking is dangerous for your health. As you all know, the tobacco companies mounted a long campaign, produced a lot of science, in inverted commas, and it took 20 years for there to be international recognition that smoking was dangerous to health. It may take that long in relation to 5G. The situation we have at the moment is, of course, that the telcos cannot prove that it does not harm. So it becomes very much a question of who bears the onus. My view is that once you hit a council or an authority with doctors' reports and the studies that Dr. Cooper talked about, it then places a very heavy onus on the telcos to go get evidence to the contrary. And I think all I'll be able to say at this stage is there is no evidence because it hasn't been around long enough, and therefore the precautionary principle comes into play and we should win. We're a little bit careful about McDonald's case. It was a good result, and it was, by the way, it was 2013 and 2003, because it was decided pursuant to the Safety Rehabilitation and Compensation Act, which deals with Commonwealth employees. So that case becomes relevant in the Commonwealth workplace, doesn't become that relevant in the overall community, depending upon which system or state law you're going under. The other problem we're going to have, of course, is politicians have said we have a brave new world, autonomous motor vehicles, 3D imaging left, right and centre, and this all relies on 5G technology. And then we have to start talking about alternatives. Now obviously for homes, the alternative is fibre, direct fibre to the home, and that's not going to help for autonomous or self-drive vehicles. It's not going to help for hotspots around cities, for free mobile Wi-Fi in large organisations, areas such as airports, or in remote areas, which a lot of them are in Australia. LED may or may not be the answer, but it's going to take a lot to convince government to pause and draw breath and find out what the real effects of this 5G technology may be, and whether it's appropriate, I think it's a better word to put, to pause and find out exactly what alternatives are available, and then you draw a benefits versus a detriment analysis and see where you go. I don't want to say too much more. Each individual case will depend upon its own facts. I think you've got to make sure you have as many facts as possible, and therefore when you have so much literature available talking about the potential detriment of electromagnetic radiation, you should use it. Hit the counsel with the lot, and then see what the telcos can come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Now, just a quick one that I just wanted to mention too is that what's the remedy? What can be done if what's the alternative? And the alternative could be things like, yes, Ethernet or just fibre optic, as Greg was talking about. But the other thing that hasn't been raised is shielding. Shielding your homes from the electromagnetic radiation. Now, shielding your home would involve painting it with silver-based paint, from putting aluminium flywire type arrangements, basically setting up your property like a Faraday cage. And that can actually cost a lot of money. So in a sense, the civil liability or the civil remedy, if, for example, around airports, etc. like that, you happen to live there, is to put shielding up. But who's going to pay for that? Okay? And that's where the civil liability issue comes in, etc. Now, we actually have a building biologist who's actually in the room. I'll just quickly introduce you. What she does is she actually measures the dosimetrics and measures the actual radiation that's coming from in your home and can work it out. Now, my situation is this, and I just want to explain this very, very quickly. How do we prove that there is electromagnetic radiation in your home? Can we get a building biologist to go and do a detailed report? Yes, we can, and there we have an expert there. And the simple way to explain that you're being emitted with electromagnetic radiation in your home is get your mobile phone, have a look at the bars that you've got from your carrier, and that'll tell you that you're being emitted, you're being exposed to electromagnetic radiation in your home. That's the simplest tool that you can use, very common sense, and the courts should usually accept that as being quite credible. To say, yes, I've got bars in my home, but if you want to go further, you'd get a building biologist or someone like that. So I'll just invite Diane to come up, quickly explain who she is, and then we'll have a Q&A. Is that all right?
Okay, hi guys, just really quickly, what I do is come into your home. I measure the 4 parameters of electropollution. So we're looking at electric fields, magnetic fields, and high frequency radiation, and dirty electricity as well. All of that is then quantified. We also work out what is your background level. So in most home situations, the majority of your exposure is what's actually in your home that you've brought in there. And so we get rid of that, and then we work out what's actually coming in. And then if we roll out 5G, we can then measure that against what's then changed. And if you're seeking medical advice or you've had bloods done, you can obviously measure that against any change in health effects. That's pretty much it. Yeah, we can do legal reports, so just got to give me a couple of weeks to get everything calibrated.
How available is building biologists? Because I've been searching for one on the web. How many are you spending?
In Australia, if you look on the ASBB website, that'll have all of the nationally accredited building biologists. In WA, we've got 3 nationally accredited building biologists. Yeah.
Excuse me. We live relatively close to a tower, quite a new one, but it's on a borderline of some of the boundaries that were mentioned. Can your reports pick up on whether that's a concern or not, or would you just kind of assess in general whether that's...
No, I can assess from any point on your block or on your position. If it's a public space, then I can definitely assess that, but I can't go into someone else's property.
Can you recommend any meters?
Any
Meters to measure radiation?
One of the problems you're going to come up with is because of the change in the frequencies, a lot of them won't be sensitive enough to cover the bandwidth when you're looking at radio frequencies. There are some sort of run-of-the-mill ones, a few tri-field meters that cover everything that sort of sit around a few $100s, but they're definitely not sensitive enough to really use credibly, or sensitive enough to sort of get any of the little high frequency spikes that might be coming out from different appliances. Yeah.
Do you recommend something?
Possibly like a Cornet ED, I think it's an 88T. That's an easy one that you can use. But again, it's not going to be great, but it's going to be something. Yeah.
Is that the one that you use for all of your...
No. My husband's in the room, so I won't tell you how much mine.
All right, folks, so we've got, I think, is Dr. Cooper still here? He's gone, has he? He's gone, okay, so it's just Greg and I left. So any questions, just feel free. Okay. Sorry, Jeff, before you go.
Before we go into questions, there were a couple of other problems I should have mentioned. I'm certainly not in this category, but there are a lot of people who class Dr. Cooper and other medicos who come with the opinion of charlatans. For every Dr. Cooper, you'll find 200 other doctors who say this is all unproven rubbish. So that's another issue you're going to have to deal with. And there's also the question of what's reasonable, and that's why you need the scientific reports, because if you're talking about reasonable beliefs, you have to be able to back it up with something harder sometimes than just a doctor's opinion, because the court then may look behind the doctor's opinion and decide whether it's reasonable. And Ray mentioned injunctions. Don't go around trying to take out injunctions yourself, because you won't get one without an undertaking to damages. And you can imagine what the damages would be if you manage to stop a telco putting in a 5G, which later goes ahead. They'll come after you for everything you've got. So what you do is you get the counsel to stop the telcos doing something, and if necessary, the counsel take out the injunctions or abatement notices. So what you need to do is get somebody else, some public authority, to do what you want done, rather than taking on the risk yourself.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions. I'm not sure if they're relevant directly to
That's
you.
fine.
I've tried to look into myself previously, proposed 5G towers, and I'm finding it very difficult. Do you have a reference as to where we can find out where these 5G spots are going
Oh yes, absolutely.
to be happening? Because
I'll show you. It's very simple. Okay, jump on the internet, and what you do is you go to what's called the RFNSA website. So I'll do that right now, RFNSA. And it's actually produced by the industry. You just enter your address here, and it will tell you where the towers are in that area. So just hit me with an address.
sorry, I've managed to find. Excuse me if it looks a bit different from up there, but I managed to find out where they are.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that says where it's proposed, because my concern is getting in ahead before they have been put in. But
Oh, you can't do that.
You can't do that?
No, well, there's no other way. The only way we know is if they've been put on the RFNSA website. So this is the industry saying, hey guys, this is where we're going to put a tower. We're going to... It's sort of like a public consultation thing. So if they don't have development approval, they don't need it. They'll just put on this RFNSA website, and they'll put down exactly where the towers are they're proposing to put them, because they have to do it under the code, and they'll put their own EME reports. Those EME reports are their own reports. They're not from anyone. They've got supposedly it's their reports.
Right.
And everything you saw Dr. Cooper bring up is actually on these sites. So I can do it right now, if you like. If you have a look here, you can see here. There's Perth, and it'll tell you the addresses. So you can see there, and it tells you. In this case, we've got Wellington Street, Perth. You can see here. There's a 5G there. Now, if we click on that, it should come up, and it'll tell you the location. You can see there it is, and it'll actually give you up at the top. You'll see a compliance certificate, and see the EME report. We'll click on that, and remember I talked about the 1 volt per metre issue. So it tells you okay, whoa, gee, that's gone up a bit. It'll tell you here distance from the site, the percentage of the public exposure limit. In this one, it's not there. But in this case, the electromagnetic field, look at that, 16.26 volts per metre, 15.8. What's the occupational standard? 0.01. Okay? So just have a look at that. All right? Does that answer your question?
Sorry, just the only quick last one was whether some of the notes you've gone over, I know you said your computer was playing up, but is there anywhere we can access some of the notes that you've gone over today? Like the letters you mentioned, from the doctors, or some of the
obviously
discussions
I
you
can't
had?
give you letters from the doctors, but what we can do is do like a bit of a précis as to sort of like a template that you can use, if that helps. And that'll be through, so you have to get the organisers to do that.
That'd be one chat.
That'll assist, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, hi. My question's to do with airports, the 5G, the spread eagle stuff. Can you offer any information on that? And also the Wi-Fi, what they're doing in the planes.
Okay, the planes. Okay, yep, I found exactly the same thing, and I do have an answer for that for you. Okay, and I have an answer for space. Here it is here. Space Systems Regulations. Now, how this works, the best way to explain it is that they have to get a licence, and they have to get it under ACMA. And they have to, so basically it brings us into our jurisdiction. So if an emitter from space wants to beam down beams and whatever, they have to get a licence to do so. And they have to go to ACMA for that. And once they're in with ACMA and they've been approved with a licence, then in essence, they're in our jurisdiction and we can go forward. That's how you sort of attack the space issue. If you could show that you've got a doctor's certificate that says that you're sensitive to these things and it's going to harm you, then you'd have to arrange that before you even got there to the airport and try and work out some arrangement that you're exempted or they can do some other way of searching you. Yeah. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next. Sorry, thank you.
Is 5G already on, or are they just putting in the infrastructure at the moment?
Well, we don't know, to be quite frank with you. We don't know. What I can tell you is that there was the best way to explain this, you know the CME report that we're looking at, okay, and they're talking about all this. Who polices that? Who makes sure that they're complying with that? What you'll find is there was a Senate inquiry which was done by the Senate into this, and the inquiry is, and I've got the official Hansard right in front of me. It was basically talking about something here, and I'm just going to read this to you. Senator Bob Brown said this to Mr. Alhouse, who was with ARPANZA. Along with the telecommunications industry, do their own internal audits and checks on telecommunications towers to their own satisfaction. 21 sites have been checked out of 18,000 sites. In essence, Senator Brown, when he was going through this, actually found out and said, and PANZA admitted it and so did ACMA, and basically they said that they don't test it, they leave it to industry to test out their own internal audits. So in essence, folks, what we have here is self-regulation by the telcos, okay? They're not technically policed, okay? That's where your building biologists, etc. come into it. You need to get the dosimetrics sorted so as you know for sure what's coming from those towers. These things are produced by the industry themselves, okay? Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah. Is there something been done, talk about approaching councils, is there anything been done at a federal level?
Well, councils, or clearly with the Dundas Street issue, you can lobby your local member of parliament to attend certain, send them stuff, explain to them, can you turn up to some sort of consultation meeting. With these things, they're supposed to do consultations, so to push them for it. You'll see that they always advertise them, I'll be doing a consultation meeting. It's not required by law to do it, but you just turn up. They'll say you've got a certain amount of time in which to respond. That's not really a legally binding situation. Just go and lobby a member of parliament, try and show them the literature, everything, and try and...
No, I mean, is there anything being done by someone like yourself at a federal level to stop this nationally?
Well, the best way to explain this to you is I've gone away from the federal level. I'm doing it at the state level, at the local grassroots level, because that's the way it works. It's going to be very hard to do it at the federal level because you've got the Telecommunications Act, which allows these guys to do pretty much what they want under federal government, federal legislation. It stops them from having to do development applications, etc. But one thing that's very, very sure is that they can't remove or escape themselves from peace and good behaviour type arrangements such as keeping the peace, which is things like apprehended violence orders, those sorts of things, peace and good behaviour orders, nuisance provisions under our nuisance laws, and they can't avoid the criminal code in the states. The states have their role in looking after their own criminal code, and the federal government can't really intervene in that. So what I've done is technically circumvented ACMA, Hands Act, Hansa, all of them, if that makes sense. So how I'm tackling that problem is not listening to them. That's the best way to explain it. In essence, it's trying to show that technically Hansa standard is obsolete, is really what I'm saying.
Hi, my question is for schools. So I've got two daughters currently in school, which I've had to pull them out because they've put all single cells, I don't know if everybody's aware yet, but there's single cells on top of every bloody classroom. The school principal informed me that, I don't know what it is because I'm not technically minded in that way, but there's basically a grid around the whole school. It's already in 5G. My youngest daughter's in kindy, and I was informed that they're using iPads 50% of the day. My year 4 daughter is on it 90%, and they're going to do even more. My query is, I'm taking them to court, that I'm doing. Yep. And looking for others who want to join me on that. Who the hell am I taking to court?
Okay.
Exactly.
The
nuisance thing? I love that. Can I use that?
Yeah, just
The best person to try to take the course is the Minister of Education.
Oh!
You write him a letter saying, I'm concerned about this, all this study shows that you're creating harm, etc., etc., etc.
Doctor's letter.
And there's
Okay.
Yeah, Ray's got a notice here, we should give it to somebody.
Okay, so Minister of Education.
I'll quickly read it. Okay, here, this is what you do. Okay. You send it to, in this case, this is the letter we sent to the Honourable Kate Jones, Minister for Education, Brisbane. This is in Brisbane. Jim Watson, the Director General of the Department of Education and Training, and the Principal of the school. And basically, it's a notice, and we basically said, please note that you have allowed them to place Wi-Fi, or will place and allow contaminants in the classrooms and the various Wi-Fi enabled devices and mobile phones that will emit electromagnetic radiation upon school grounds. It is your intention to use and allow others to use these devices while my children are present and in close proximity. I do not consent to my children being irradiated with electromagnetic radiation while staying in the care of your school. I am the firm belief, and reasonable belief, very important, that any proposed electromagnetic radiation emitted from various devices that you will either directly or indirectly possess or manage and or control has the potential to expose my children to unnecessary and unreasonable risks. It goes on. But in essence, we're talking about everything that we talked about today. That's how you start.
Can I get a copy of that, or yes, can I hire your services? Or
I can give you a redacted version. Is that okay?
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. One thing you've got to understand too is that we have what's called a joint, to prosecute what we call a common purpose. Now, prosecuting a common purpose under the criminal code means that if I'm one person who, say, the principal of the school, and I've been put on notice that I know that this thing harms, okay, and I then, after that notice, continue to put it in there, and I've had the approval of my minister and a few other people, etc. Everybody that's involved in that is criminal.
I've got an announcement and a question. And the announcement is I've taken it on myself to produce a report which I'm sending out to all the councils. About 40% has gone out to all the councils and sites in the state. And that gives them a history of the microwaves, where it's going, and the hazards of it. So that's already happening now. So, and what I'll do, I'll go back around and I'll just see if people are ready.
Is that backed up by the expert opinion? It's not just a subjective...
Yeah, what I've done is I've taken information from people that are experts in their area and put all that together.
So you technically collated it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You still need an expert who's going to collate that for you, if that makes sense, to give their opinion as to whether or not. That's what a doctor does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the idea of it is purely just to raise awareness. Why I'm saying that is that there is that document going out now.
Oh, good on
you. It's going to cut, yeah. So, but then, for what you've been telling us, we can then apply that. And the question I've got is, in relation to smart meters,
Yes.
can we apply the same?
Yes, exactly the same principle.
To
Yes.
an existing smart meter?
Exactly.
You can get the smart meter deactivated.
You can use exactly the same principles for stuff that's either going to be built or has already been built, or going to be installed or already installed. You can still use the same principle to stop it. They're still assaulting you, whichever way you look at it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
No worries. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned getting a doctor's report.
Yes.
Are you speaking about a regular GP? Because I understand what your colleague said. Or are you talking about getting a specialist like Russell?
Well, you can go and get a normal GP, just your normal doctor. It's still expert, medical evidence, okay. And you can always ask them to refer it to Dr. Cooper for his opinion. So you can get the doctors to refer to Dr. Cooper. So you can do it that way.
So if you were to rock up at your doctor's with a whole heap of documentation, showing them what all this evidence and studies have indicated, then it's the onus is on your doctor to say, no, all those people are speaking about a crock, or...
What you need to do is convince, this thing's been recorded, so what Dr. Cooper put up there was a real strategy as to why that was done today, and I suggested to do that. Get the doctor to watch what Dr. Cooper said, because what he was talking about is in doctor lingo, okay? That will then give them the, I guess what it is give them the nous to go, okay, wow, that science makes sense, what Dr. Cooper is saying. Now, to give you an idea, at Dundas Street, we had 8 specialist doctors who engaged us to do this, okay? At the meeting, we also had doctors from other areas that came in as well. That's when TPG knew the game was up. It was simple as that, okay? So, that's what I...
So where do we get access to that video? Do we
yes,
speak
it's
to organisers?
apparently it's going to go viral, so... I've been told.
On the internet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anything we could do with aviation, like Jadwood airports, small airports, high frequencies coming from there?
The only way you can prove it, if you can prove, say for the building biologist, that there's some radiation coming from somewhere, and then once you start investigating where is this stuff coming from, and then once you know where it's coming from, and it's clearly in breach of the standards, or even worse than that, it's you've had a doctor's report that says this is harmful.
Telco, same thing with an airport.
Yeah, same with any emitter. So it could be a neighbour that's got a router in their room and it's hurting you from the neighbour next door. You can still do something against that. So it's all, anyone that emits it and causes it to be emitted. Yeah, don't know who they are. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Folks, this is this gentleman here is Daniel Taylor. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this man, and neither would Greg or Dr. Cooper. We went up in Tasmania about 3 weeks ago. Early in the morning, very lucky to get me, and explained the situation. And I said, "Look, mate, let's do something." And if it wasn't for him, this wouldn't be here. Thank you, Daniel. So, what's your question, Daniel?
Some people here know that I founded the No Wi-Fi's in School Action Group on Facebook, and there's a website, and hopefully it registered all on the way. Now, I've been batting my head against the brick wall, as some people were aware and probably experienced with the principal, the deputy principal, and more recently the director of education. They all seem to, as you mentioned, fall back on the APANSA guidelines, which
they all do.
Is it based on my scant awareness that pretty much the sole reason for APANSA to be created by the government and empowered by the government is for their role to protect the public from radiation?
That is their sole objective under the APANSA Act. That's exactly what it says. And APANSA must abide by the objective of the Act. Is that correct, Greg? Yeah. So in essence, if they're not following the objective, then
they're in breach of trust.
Well, they're out of power.
Yeah.
Any decision they make is in essence ultra virus, which basically means that they don't have the power to make that.
And it seems that they've pretty much admitted that they haven't included any details or consideration of non-ionising radiation in the production of these guidelines, which everyone seems to fall back on, which when it comes to non-ionising radiation such as Wi-Fi and other wireless, that would tend to indicate that they're not protecting the public and they're outside their role for being there. So is there any feasible means of...
Well, that's how I see where you're coming from. The first thing that they've obviously realised is they can't give medical advice, okay? When I made it very clear in the advices that they can't, and then they turn around and put a disclaimer saying, we don't give medical advice, because by doing so, they're acting ultra vires to their act, under their power. And that's how it works. My suggestion is, look, I'm just giving you a very basic sort of overview, so is Greg and everybody here, but the situation is that if you really, really want to get into that deep, best thing is to probably get some professional legal advice on that if you're going to go further. But yeah, that's sort of, you can in some way.
I suppose if it came to fruition that there was a successful attempt at getting a declaration that basically they weren't upholding their standard or their role for being there and that they weren't protecting, is that possibly...
What you're talking about is high court realm stuff here. Okay. I guess Greg can explain.
They're not acting outside. They're not acting outside their remit if they're only partially doing their remit. So what it means is they're failing in their complete duty. But to try to enforce it is going to be very difficult. You can go to the relevant minister and say, here are the problems. If you want to take that thing into court, good luck. You'll need professional help to do it, and I don't know how successful. I'd have to sit down and very carefully consider the facts, and then give an advice, and anybody else you go to have to do the same thing. So it's not something I'll give on the run. But
yeah,
they're not acting ultra vires at the moment, but what they're probably doing is not acting not acting in the entirety of their responsibilities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're not doing the lines and stuff.
I'll definitely be in touch.
Okay.
Daniel, can I just make a quick thing? Maybe it's something like a class action case. This is what I've been trying to do with other concerned parents and why we should get together.
You'll have trouble with the class action, because the class action is the only way to get a class action legal firm involved. This is money at the end of the trial.
Really?
And they do it for a reason, and they usually get a certain percentage of whatever damages, etc. You can certainly get a whole lot of people together, and then if you're going to have to hire professional advice, it becomes a lot cheaper. Paying 150 or 120 or whatever it is of a bill. But bear in mind, if you're unsuccessful, you may get a cost order against you, the other side's costs.
If you've got no money behind you because you're on a pension, they can't get blood out of stone.
Well, yes. One of the tactics used by firms who do class actions to have a lead litigator who has no assets, and they hide behind that.
I saw a thing on YouTube, so I don't know how true it was, but it was in Hawaii when they were trying to introduce the smart meters. They objected to it, and of course the telecommunication companies just went ahead and forced people to have it. So everybody wrote a letter to their counsellor saying, if in the future it is proven that it causes any loss, harm or damage to me, I'm going to personally sue you.
Is that a notice?
You can always do it, but the question is, the council could always say, yes, we're on notice, we had a reasonable belief that it wasn't going to cause any harm. And that becomes an action down the track when you prove there's been some damage to you. What you'd be saying is the council was negligent in allowing this, and it was foreseeable because I wrote them a letter. But you have to prove negligence on the part of the council.
Yeah.
And the foreseeability would partially covered by the letter, but it's not clear. I mean, it's nuisance act of the council, and it will strengthen your case. I can't say it will completely.
And the other question I have is, on the internet, is there all these EMF shielding devices? Are they any good?
No. How long's a piece of string? And the other problem you've got is, unless you're going to walk around in an equivalent of a Faraday suit, that doesn't. You protect your home, but that may help you, especially when you sleep. but you've got to get out and do it at some stage.
Yeah, so little things that you wear and that are probably not that effective.
Well, you have to seek some medical advice about that, but in general rule, I think it's very hard. It's a bit like trying to put, have a completely bulletproof outfit on when you go into a battlefield. There's always going to be parts exposed, otherwise unless you cover yourself 120 kilos of this and
Thank you.
Should we be after our councils to have broad community consultation on this? Because I have it in writing from 2 local government ministers and also shadow minister that councils have the autonomy to do things on behalf of their community, but they don't always consult. So sometimes they just go ahead with doing things that the community, or a large portion of the community, object to. So on this particular issue or similar issues, should we be making sure that they have broad community consultation?
I agree, yes, you should put councils on notice. You should let them know you have this concern and you expect to be consulted with any intention to allow them. But then again, bearing in mind, the telcos don't have, as far as I'm aware, don't have to consult with councils about 5G, the small.
That's where it gets.
Yes, but not the smaller.
Not the small cells.
No.
That's where it gets confusing because I have read parts of the Local Government Act, and the role of the councillor is to act in the interests of electors, residents and ratepayers. And this is why I always get confused, because if they have the autonomy and they have consultation, then, in theory, the outcome of that should be what is right for the community.
But a lot of councils will think they're acting to the advantage and benefit of the ratepayers by putting a 5G network as an incredibly beautiful thing to be told about. So I think you've got to make your local councils aware there are some significant concerns, provide the documentation and demand consultation.
Consultation, yes. All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. If there's any more questions, I think that's it. Thank you for coming, and thank you so much for Lou and Tanya for organising this. It's been an absolute wonder what they've done here. And thank you all for being here, and good luck. Thank you.